Hey guys. So a commenter asked me what my biggest misunderstandings of the law of assumption, manifestation, have been. And first of all, let me just define the law of assumption the way I talk about it here, just in case anyone doesn't know. The law of assumption is that the world is your reflection, and everything in it is being created and perceived and experienced by you. There is nothing outside of you. And so the law of assumption is, if you change something from within that world inside of you, it will change something in your perceived but not real 3D outer reality, basically. If you take on a completely different persona, you will begin to create a completely different world. Assume in this context does not mean to surmise without evidence. It means to take on, as in to assume a new role. It doesn't mean I assume that you're a nice person because I just saw you talking to somebody and you were acting nice, so I assume you're a nice person. It means, it's more of a global type of taking something on than it is a mental deduction of something. So the law of assumption, and like nearly everybody talks about that as though assume means the way most people use it in language today, which is just, to me, that's a fundamental misunderstanding of everything. So, but that's other people's misunderstandings. Let's talk about mine. For like the first 20 years that I was even in this mental space, it was following reading The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles when I was 24. I definitely had exposure to all of this stuff from the time I was pretty young, early teens. But it wasn't until I read that book that it sort of put everything together for me. Things that I had already been just sort of naturally thinking about and experiencing. Creating things due to imagination, visualization, and a different attitude, assuming a different type of personality, things like that. That was stuff I had been consciously doing long before that, since I was an early teen. I read The Power of Your Subconscious Mind when I was pretty young, around that age, like 13 or 14. So some of these ideas had been like implanted early. But so The Science of Getting Rich, which I have the audio that I made with commentary in the links below in the description box. It's gotten some pretty good feedback. So that book was very life-changing for me because it's like an instruction manual. It's very simple. It lays out exactly what you need to do, how you need to think in order to start to manifest these things. It never uses that word, I don't think, at least not in the current way it's used. But so that, to me, the age of that book, my own personal experience, and then, the content, which just, a lot of it felt right to me, and the rest of it, I was like, I'm willing to take this completely on faith. And in the beginning, Wallace Wattles says you need to take this on faith. And so I was like, okay. I was at a good age and a good place in my life to just be like, okay. And so I did that. And over the next decade, I went from being someone who was trying to get a business going and unable to pay rent, going bankrupt, all that. I went from that to being in the early positions of getting the current business that I have going. It was successful within a decade after that. By the time I read that when I was 24, by the time I was 34, the things in me that needed to change in order for me to be a successful business person had changed. That's what this is. And so the issue with this was that book is, it's pretty clear if you read The Science of Getting Rich that it can't just be applicable to becoming wealthy. It's pretty obvious that it's all universal, but I just didn't think about that. I was so focused on other things that I just kind of neglected to grasp how universal it was. I didn't really put two and two together that I'm not me living in this random world that I've always lived in, creating this one special area that's being affected by my mind. You know, I think a lot of people have this misunderstanding. So I hope people watch this video because this could be a light bulb moment for a lot of people. I think people view manifesting as something sort of magical that you're doing within a larger space of things just happening to you or things not coming from you. You know, like it's a special skill. You shut off your random world for a little while and you start to have mental control over creating stuff. For whatever reason, I didn't fully get it, grasp it. It didn't hit me in a real way for almost, I guess it wasn't 20 years. It was 16 years because it was when I was 40. I've recently talked about having sort of a revelation that I was creating all of this. And that's what that was. That followed, and it was in the middle of reading a lot of Neville Goddard's works, which I'm so thankful that I read those later and those weren't my first introduction, and that Wallace Wattles was my first introduction, because Wallace Wattles gave me a sort of like an action plan and an attitude plan, and through that I had a ton of success. And so then I had experience and I understood, how this kind of works mechanically in a way. But, then Neville Goddard kind of filled the whole thing in. Like, you're not just a human who is doing the manifesting here and there, and everything else that's showing up is just random or something like that. You are the creator of it all. It's all coming from you. The things that you're deliberately doing are really the only difference between those and everything else in your life is that you're conscious and aware and deliberate about those things. Everything else is being created by you too. And that's why these focused, specific manifestations are just like, in my mind, it's like treating a symptom without treating an entire disease. You want to cure the underlying issue, not just treat these final end stage manifestations of that disease, which are the things you actually see in the world. That's kind of a bad analogy, but you're creating it all. You're not just creating these little things. So you don't want to just focus your attention on some specific thing that you don't like. You want to say, why is this thing that is going through the projector projecting something that isn't right, or what I want? That was an analogy my ex used when talking about me with relationships. He was like, you have this, you create all this great stuff, but it's like you've got this big smudge on the projector in the relationship area, and everything that comes through the projector onto the screen is beautiful except this big black mark that's there. And it's because there was something in me going through the projector creating these shit outer things, and that was that I believed that I was a rotten to the core person, which I've also spoken about recently on these videos. And it was when that changed, when I've talked about that recently, last 2 videos ago. I don't know, I'll link to it maybe. When that changed and how I felt, and then the outer world started to mold itself to that thing being gone, that was what really put it all together for me. That's when my ex, again, I think he's one of my guides incarnated in life. You should read the book Journey of Souls. It talks about that. It's really interesting. Your guides sometimes incarnate at the same time you do, and then they're there. I really think my ex might be one of those, but I don't remember why, but he sent me a video to he sent me a link to a video from the Joseph Rodriguez channel, which has gotten pretty weird, but it used to be really good. And it was a Neville Goddard talk. Neville Goddard, it was Joseph Rodriguez discussing Neville Goddard, and I was like, Neville Goddard rings a bell, because I used to have a business where I was flipping books, and I had 30,000 books, And I was like, I feel like I remember buying some of his stuff, but I never read any of it. For whatever reason, I never picked up a book by Neville Goddard in my life before I was 40. And I had read all kinds of stuff. Joseph Murphy, Norman Vincent Peale. I don't know. There was a whole bunch of those guys around the same time. And the places where I would go to get book stock to resell had so many like old books that were so cool. And I bought a lot of those and read a lot of those. But somehow I never found Neville. It feels like it was meant to be. I immediately bought the Neville Goddard reader and started reading that, and it was pretty mind-blowing what the pieces it was putting together for me. If Neville Goddard isn't mind-blowing for you, it's just because you're just not at the exact right place in your life for that stuff to fall into place. The same thing that seems boring and not groundbreaking can just be like the most mind-blowing thing a year later, 2 years later, when you've had some life experience that's shifted you a little bit. So I was at just the right place for Neville. And that brought on that sort of revelation and the month of bliss that followed that, where so many ways in which I was believing there was something wrong with me kept revealing itself and getting removed. And it was amazing. And I wrote a whole bunch of stuff about that while I was doing it. And I started this YouTube channel. And so I would say that was my biggest misunderstanding of the law, was that it was a skill I was doing, or that it was limited to one area. My biggest misunderstanding was this is a skill that a normal human uses, instead of realizing this is the way humans create their experience entirely. So that was my biggest misunderstanding. And I bet a lot of people watching this, even if this doesn't register for you right now, I bet you're having the same issue in some form or fashion. And may you have a moment of stark realization like I did, because that was pretty cool. So that was my biggest misunderstanding. Now, my biggest mistake with the law of assumption, or whatever you want to call it, my biggest mistake followed this immediately. It followed this immediately, and my biggest mistake, aside from getting involved in the manifestation community at all, which I think people are largely better off if they don't interact with a lot of other people about this, especially if you're not sure yet of yourself. The best reference point you have is yourself for this stuff, not other people. And so my biggest mistake was coming into this, fully getting what was going on, having 16 years of like evidence of it, and knowing myself and how I do things, and then entertaining a lot of other people's ideas about things. It did not help me in the slightest. It was an impediment. Just entertaining other people's ideas, thinking still that there was something I was missing, which I think it was reasonable for me to think I was missing something, because I had been missing something for a long time. And I was like, well, what else do I not understand? Was I making this way too complicated? Did I view this as something improved by my own human actions and stuff like that? Like, did the way I created all this amazing stuff in my life come about in the hard way? I did a lot of questioning. I mean, maybe this wasn't a mistake, I don't know, but this is the closest thing to it. I just entertained the thoughts, of other people. I entertained other people's opinions about this. I let other people tell me I was doing things wrong, and I considered whether that was true. And all it really did, I mean, I guess I would say the consequence of the mistake was just that, I probably spun my wheels in some areas for a year or two. But, it just, eventually I just realized, of all these people I'm talking to, like, I'm not sure that none of them really have lives that I would think prove that they know what they're talking about. It's just a lot of people online and stuff like that. And so I would say that was my biggest mistake, was thinking that I didn't know what I was doing. And considering that even though I had the proof that what I was doing worked in the outer 3D world, reflecting what I would want it to, for the most part, entertaining the idea that I was, this is actually magic in some way. This is actually a magic trick. I definitely opened my mind to the idea that this is a magic trick and that it was very simple to just like make things into whatever you want. And while I think the concepts are pretty simple, you find that when you put them into practice, some things change really fast. Some things just don't change at all, no matter what you try to do. And it takes a long time to get a little bit of progress on certain things. And that's just whatever's slow and tedious for you, that's just a part of your particular bag of life experiences and probably what you came here to experience and work through, live through, experience through, So I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. And I don't even think the misunderstanding was a bad thing, other than that some areas of my life didn't work very well until I figured it out. So that's my answer to that question. And I think those are probably really the only things that I can come up with. I don't feel like there have been a lot of bad things that have come out of manifestation for me. I really hate that word, but I don't, it's mostly been good stuff that's come from all the time I've mentally spent in this area. But, one other one that I'll just throw out there was, in any way interacting with the people in the specific person community. And, at the time I was single and I had just broken up with somebody. I'm talking about like when I first got involved with Neville Goddard. I had just broken up with somebody not long before that, a few months. And when I tried to imagine, I just wasn't like quite over that relationship emotionally yet. I didn't need to be dabbling in the romantic area at all anywhere. I needed to just be sort of recovering, moving on from that relationship. But I decided I was going to use the Neville Goddard imaginal techniques to imagine my future husband or whatever. And since I still loved the last person. So he kept popping into the scenes that I would do, and then they would come alive. And so I started to think, wow, maybe I'm supposed to like manifest this person. And so for about 6 weeks, I would say, maybe, I kind of went down that road, and I did not like that. And I don't know. The SP thing to me is just kind of crazy. A lot of people do this with their exes, and it's like, they're exes for a reason. They're exes for a reason. Just because you created relationships and maybe almost certainly you contributed to the end of the relationship, that doesn't mean that you then go back and, revive the dead, raise the dead. That's not what that means. There's no obligation to do that. You can, you've got everything in the world to create with. You create a new person. It doesn't, creating somebody new doesn't negate or devalue the love and experience you shared with other people. So you don't have to go back to an old person and try to revive it, even if you did things to screw the relationship up. So that was a mistake, I think. That was a waste of my energy. I could have, especially at that time, there was a abundant energy available to me at that time because of this revelation and this period of no separation and no doubt and all of that, and this rapid change. That energy was a waste, I think. But I did do a lot of imagining. My imagining with that person was not us being together. It wasn't like Neville Goddard, imagine a ring on your finger and imagine yourself with Mrs. in front of your name. What I did with him was I imagined him having a different vibe, basically. He was a wonderful person who really needed to find a sense of self and to find a solid, grounded identity. And he was 7 years younger than me. So, he was still, 32 is the new 17 these days. So he just needed to find himself. I don't know if he has. I haven't talked to him in like 4 years, but I haven't talked to him since, actually, no, I haven't talked to him since I met Matt. So, that's almost it's 4.5 years. So, but what I did with him is I just imagined him feeling very secure and proud and approving of himself and, just calm, and I just imagined him happy a lot. And it felt really good for me, and it definitely felt like it was shifting something in reality. And I did talk to him a few more times after that. In the next 6 months, we talked a few more times, and it definitely seemed like it was changing something on his end. So I hope very much that he is happy and healthy and emotionally in a great place. And yeah, I wish for him to find somebody who makes him really happy. So I guess that wasn't really a mistake either. But I would not recommend going down the specific person route. And the more obsessed you are with a specific person, the more I think you need to stop and turn all of that energy inward and intend for all the things about you that need to be revealed to come to light, and intend to have the courage and ability to work through those things so that you can get to the other side and let that obsessive thing with a person go. Because nobody who is in that place is doing well mentally, and nobody who's in that place needs to be thinking about another person. It's a grand opportunity for the things about you that are hidden to come to the surface. So even the SP obsession, if you ask me, is incredibly valuable if you're willing to approach it that way. If you're willing to say, this is not about somebody else. This person is my projection. This obsession and need and desire is a projection. What do I need to know about myself? What's causing this? I want to know what the cause is. I accept that the projection is an illusion, even though it feels so real. And my sadness and longing and obsession and, love feels so real. I know that this is just the grandest illusion I can experience, and it is masking something huge, a huge gift for me. The thing that is projecting this illusion is a huge gift for me when I recognize what it is and figure it all out and clean it all out. It'll be life-changing. Okay, I'm going to end this here. I hope that helps somebody. Have a great day.